Hi everyone. This presentation is about child and adolescent development. Chapter 1, Introduction. The thrust of today's education is student-centered learning. Educators and school administrators are mandated to transform the classroom and school into an environment that will deliver sound, learner-centered education. So, student-centered learning is also known as learner-centered education, which puts the student's interest first, acknowledging the student's voice as central to the learning experience. The educators and school administrators are required to take courses which will provide them with broad and deep knowledge and understanding of children development. So, of course, how to become effective teacher or educators. It is imperative to know the principles and process of development and also the factors that influence it in order to create and implement the appropriate curriculum, instructional materials, assessment and evaluation tools, and teaching strategies. So we go now to child development. This refers to the biological, psychological, and emotional changes that occur in human beings between birth and the end of adolescence. As the individual progresses from dependency to increasing autonomy, it is a continuous process with a predictable sequence, yet having a unique course for every child. It does not progress at the same rate, and each stage is affected by the preceding types of development. It was in the 20th century where the interest in the field of child development began to emerge. Researchers um, started to focus on the development of children and the factors that have influence on development in order to transform the classroom and the learning process from being teacher-centered into learner-centered. We go now to the four concepts. We have here the child, adolescent, growth, and development. The definitions of these will help us to have a better understanding and perspective of what child and adolescent growth and development are all about. So, we first now go to a child. This refers to a young person who is below the age of puberty and age of legal maturity, which of course varies among culture. A person below the age of 18, unless the laws of a particular country set the legal age for adulthood younger. Childhood is the period between birth and adolescence. Next, we have here the adolescent. The term is derived from a Latin word adolescer, which means to grow up into maturity. It usually connotes to a person developing or turning into the age of maturity. It is a period of transition from childhood to adulthood. We now go to growth, which refers to the progressive increase and continuous advancement of the child from birth to maturity. It is characterized by the increment in the body tissues, organs, and structures. It should not be confused with maturation, which refers to the part of development that is controlled from within the internal growth, consisting chiefly of structural changes and development of mental functions, which is indicated by a state of readiness to engage in a definite type of behavior or that growth has reached its optimal level. And development refers to the gradual and orderly unfolding of the characteristics of the individuals as they go through successive stages of growth. It also implies an increasingly progressive maturity of behavior as well as organization of personality and character. Again, in the context of the physical development of children, development refers to the process by which the child develops his or her psychomotor skills. Psychomotor skills are primarily movement tasks that lead individuals to learn about their environments. What is the importance of child and adolescent growth and development? Child and adolescent growth and development is a study of the physical, physiological, cognitive, and social changes and the facts that influence these changes that children experience and go through from birth to adulthood. It is a study on how children grow, learn, and change over time. An understanding of child development is important or essential because it allows us to fully appreciate the cognitive, emotional, physical, social, and educational growth that children go through from birth and to early adulthood. The educators will be able to meet the needs of a diverse and learner-centered education through the use of theories, researches, policies, and practices in child and adolescent growth and development. So, we now go to the theories of human development because these provide a framework for thinking about human growth, development, and learning. A theory of development deals with change over time and is usually concerned with 1. Changes over time within an area or several areas, 2. Changes among areas of development, and explanation for these changes. Numerous theories of development have influenced educational practices during the 20th century, and currently a shift is affecting theories of child and development and education. Studying child and adolescent growth and development must be put in the context or study of human development. The salient points of various theories about child and adolescent growth and development are helpful in this study. So, figuratively, salient means noticeable or prominent. These theories have influenced educators, parents, and other people involved in child rearing on how they think of children and how to educate them. Let's go first to the maturationist perspectives or maturational theory by Arnold Jessel. Assumptions: development has biological basis. Good and bad years alternate. Body types are correlated with personality development. Maturationists believe that development is a biological process that occurs automatically in predictable sequential stages over time. Practitioners subscribing to this theory consider any difficulties a child experiences as being found within the child. This theory ascertains that the level of neurological development and the genetically directed increase of physiological developments directly affect the development of physical abilities. So, second is the psychodynamic perspectives or object relations theory. By Sigmund Freud. This is concerned about how people understand and represent their relationship with other people. The objects in this theory are representations of people. Example is how others are experienced, represented, and remembered by the person doing the objectification. Object relations therapists note that people's early relationships often set the tone that later relationship will take. This occurs in part because of transference and also because what you experience early in life seems normal to you and you become in some ways drawn to new relationships that help you replicate that original normal feeling. So, when we say transference, this is the action of transferring something or the process of being transferred. This tendency works out well when early relationships are healthy, but very poorly when they are distributed. Third is the constructivist integrationist perspectives. So we have here Jean Piaget, Maria Montessori, and Lev Vygotsky. They are consistent in their belief that learning and development occur when young children interact with the environment and people around them. This theory emphasized that the importance of context in the child development. Even though knowledge is constructed from the inside out through interaction with the environment, the focus is more on the individual's coordination of relationship rather than on the socially constructed knowledge. Constructivists view young children as active participants in the learning process. Constructivists believed that development progresses through several stages as a child is motivated to inquire and to extend understanding and skill through the activities in which they initiate and engage. Because active interaction with the environment and people are necessary for learning and development, constructivists believe that children are ready for school when they can initiate many of the interactions they have with the environment and people around them. Schools and educators pay a lot of attention to the physical environment and the curriculum of the early childhood classroom. Now, what happens when a young child encounters difficulties in the learning process? When a young child encounters difficulties in the learning process, the constructivist approach is neither to label the child nor to retain him or her. Instead, constructivists give the child some individualized attention and customize the classroom curriculum to help the child address his or her difficulties. Constructivism has many varieties. So, we have active learning, discovery learning, and knowledge learning. But all versions promote a student's free exploration within a given framework or structure. The teacher acts as a facilitator who encourages students to discover principles for themselves and to construct knowledge by working to solve realistic problems. Jean Piaget was the first to note that children play an active role in gaining knowledge of the world. According to this theory, children can be thought of as little scientists who actively construct their knowledge and understanding of the world. Through his observations of his own children, Piaget developed a stage theory of intellectual development that included four distinct stages. First is the sensory motor stage from birth to age 2. Second is the pre-operational stage from age 2 to about age 7. Third, the concrete operational stage, which is from age 7 to 11. And fourth is the formal operational stage, which begins in adolescence and spans into adulthood. We now go to behaviorist environmentalist theories. We have here John B. Watson, Ivan Pavlov, and B.F. Skinner. Teachers using behavioral theory will consider any difficulties a child has as being found within the environment. Applications of this theory have resulted in an overemphasis on isolated skills and drill, as well as a heavy reliance on teacher-directed and teacher-reinforced activities. Consequently, teachers often ignore children's curiosity and prior knowledge. Now we have here an example of behaviorist learning goal. The design instruction Students are told and shown how speed and distance can be represented with uh, three circles of different radius. So assessment is summative. The teacher lectures the students on the material. The student's behavior is evaluated. Students show learning when they place the circles correctly. So, if done correctly, they are rewarded with a sticker and a good grade, and that is a positive reinforcement. If done incorrectly or when done wrong, they get a big F or another form of reprimanding the incorrect behavior. Many environmentalist influenced educators and parents believe that young children learn best by rote activities, such as reciting the alphabet over and over, copying letters, and tracing number. These viewpoints are evident in kindergarten classrooms, right? When young children are unable to respond appropriately to the classroom and school environment, they often are labeled as having some form of learning disabilities and are tracked in classrooms with curriculum designed to control their behaviors and responses. We now go to evolutionary perspective. Application of the basic principles of Darwinian evolution, particularly natural selection, to explain contemporary development. It involves the study of the genetic and environmental mechanisms that underlie the universal development of social and cognitive competencies and the evolved epigenetic or gene-environment interactions, process that adapt these competencies to local conditions. This perspective theorizes that a child's behavior and personality may be reflected by the basic will to survive and to be reproductive. It also suggests that behavior is reflected by the genetic will to survive. Seventh is the information processing perspectives. So the IPP or the information processing perspectives emerged in the 1950s. They mainly seek to explain human learning as the development of network memory structures. This theory of IPP is based on the idea that humans process the information they receive than merely responding to stimuli. This perspective equates the mind to a computer, as you can see in the picture, which is responsible for analyzing information from the environment. They view the brain as a neural computer that processes information with extraordinary efficiency and excellent performance in problem solving and critical thinking through a process increasingly enhanced over time. Now, the IPP theory consists of three main three main sensory and three main components. So sensory memory, working memory, and the long-term memory. So here is another illustration of the IPP. Yan. A great way for teachers and instructors to practice the information processing skills of their learners is to test their focusing, information gathering, remembering, and organizing skills. So, what do you mean by this? Focusing skills involve the determination of a situation and the establishment of the appropriate ways to address it. Information gathering skills involve the collection of information around the situation and the formulation of questions that will clarify it. Remembering skills involve encoding and recalling, which are both directly linked to mnemonics. Organizing skills include comparisons, categorization, sequencing, and visual, verbal or symbolic representations. In this perspective, children, like computers, are assumed by information processing approaches to have limited capacity for processing information. As they develop, however, they employ increasingly sophisticated strategies that allow them to process information more efficiently. We now go to the next theory, which is sociocultural perspectives. According to Lev Vygotsky, every function in the child's cultural development appears twice, first on the social level, and later on the individual level. First, between people, interpsychological, and then inside the child, intrapsychological. This applies equally to voluntary attention, to logical memory, and to the formation of concepts. All the higher functions originate as actual relationships between individuals. So, from this perspective, as learners participate in a broad range of joint activities and internalize the effects of working together, they acquire new strategies and knowledge of the world and culture. This theory also focuses not only how adults and peers influence individual learning, but also on how cultural beliefs and attitudes impact how instruction and learning take place. So, an important concept in social cultural theory is known as the zone of proximal development. According to Vygotsky, the zone of proximal development is the distance between the actual development level as determined by independent problem solving and the level of potential development as determined through problem solving under adult guidance or in collaboration with more capable peers. Essentially, it includes all of the knowledge and skills that a person cannot yet understand or perform on their own yet, but is capable of learning with guidance. Next one is the developmental ecological system perspectives. Yuri Bronfenbrenner was a Russian-born American developmental psychologist who is most known for his ecological systems theory of child development. He believed that a person's development was affected by everything in their surrounding environment. He divided the person's environment into five different levels. So, what are the levels of a person's environment? We have here first microsystem. This refers to the institutions and groups that most immediately and directly impact the child's development, including family, school, religious institutions, neighborhood, and peers. Second, mesosystem. Interconnections between the microsystems, interactions between the family and teachers, relationship between the child's peers and the family. Third one is the exosystem. It involves links between a social setting in which the individual does not have an active role and the individual's immediate context. For example, a parent's or child's experience at home may be influenced by the other parent's experiences at work. The parent might receive a promotion that requires more travel, which might increase conflict with the other parent and change patterns of interactions with the child. Next is the macro system. Describes the culture in which individuals live. Cultural contexts include developing and industrialized countries, socioeconomic status, poverty, and ethnicity. Fifth, chronos system. The patterning of environmental events and transitions over the life course, as well as socio-historical circumstances. An example of socio-historical circumstances is the increase in opportunities for women to pursue a career during the last 30 years. The next, yeah. So, for example, div- divorces are one transition. Researchers have found that the negative effects of divorce on children often peak in the first year after the divorce. By 2 years after the divorce, family interaction is less chaotic and more stable. Next is the lifespan perspectives. Lifespan can be defined as the period that extends from conception to death. Thus, lifespan development is a process that begins at conception and continues to death. The lifespan perspective argues that significant modifications take place throughout development. The lifespan perspective views development as lifelong, multidimensional, multidirectional, plastic, multidisciplinary, and contextual. That is according to Paul Baltes, 1939 2006. A process that involves growth, maintenance, and regulation of laws. Baltes, 1987-2003, Baltes, Lindenberger, and Staudinger, 2006. So, the next one is the humanist perspective. Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. They helped to create humanistic psychology, stressed the study of conscious experience and an individual's free will. Healthy individuals strive to reach their potential. And so, their primary goal in life is self-actualization, a state of self-fulfillment in which people achieve their highest potential in their own unique way. In this perspective, it emphasizes free will, the ability of humans to make choices and, of course, come to decisions about their lives. Instead of relying on societal standards, people are assumed to be motivated to make their own decisions about what they do with their lives. Next is the ethological theory perspectives. So Konrad Lorenz, he is an European zoologist, helped bring ethology to prominence. Central concept of this theory is imprinting, or the rapid innate learning that involves attachment to the first moving object that is seen. As you can see, Conrad, ethology stresses that behavior is strongly influenced by biology, tied to evolution, characterized by critical or sensitive periods. The next theory is multiple intelligences theory. Dr. Howard Gardner. He is an American developmental psychologist born on July 11, 1943. Senior Director of Harvard Project Zero and author of over 20 books. He is best known for Theory of Multiple Intelligences. So what is multiple intelligences theory? This theory suggests that traditional psychometric views of intelligence are too limited. Multiple intelligences theory shows promise in developing appropriate practices from children who do not fit the traditional mold or do not excel in math or linguistic areas. With proper training and resources, teachers can use children's types of intelligences to assist in planning and teaching in areas in which they are not as gifted. So, we now go to Gardner's multiple intelligences. So, first is the verbal linguistic, intelligence, well-developed verbal skills, and sensitivity to the sounds, meanings, and rhythms of words. Second, logical mathematical intelligence, or the ability to think conceptually and abstractly, and capacity to discern logical and numerical patterns. Third, spatial visual intelligence, capacity to think in images and pictures, to visualize accurately and abstractly. Fourth, bodily kinesthetic intelligence, or the ability to control one's body movements and to handle objects skillfully. Fifth, musical intelligence, ability to produce and appreciate rhythm, pitch, and timbre. Sixth, interpersonal intelligence, capacity to detect and respond appropriately to the moods, motivations, and desires of others. Next is the intrapersonal, or the capacity to be self-aware and in tune with inner feelings, values, beliefs, and thinking processes. Next is the naturalist, or the ability to recognize and categorize plants, animals, and other objects in nature. Ninth, existential intelligence, or sensitivity and capacity to tackle deep questions about human existence, such as what is the meaning of life? Why do we die? How did we get here? And that's all for the presentation. Thank you for listening.